Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMaid. And today we're going to be talking about being busy versus being efficient. Jeremy,
Efficient or
thoughts?
effective? That's a good question, isn't it?
That's a that is actually, which one did you say in the Facebook message? Did you say efficient or effective?
I think I said efficient because effective, I think, is doing the task at a certain speed, like not losing any time. But efficient is actually achieving good results faster. I believe that's how I understood it.
I think it's the opposite.
All right, stay tuned for the next cast on efficient versus effective.
Effective. But for now, we're going to go busy
Yes,
versus efficient or effective.
that's
Yeah,
right.
okay. Cool, cool. Yeah, I thought that this would be a really interesting topic to cover, at least for me, because when you messaged me about this, uh, the first thing that really came to mind was how this has changed over time. That I don't know if it was true for you, but in the beginning, at least for me, I really needed to sort of develop an actual work ethic when we started ZenMate. I was kind of just out of college. I know that you've been in a
Hacker.
career for a while. You had developed a work ethic. Me, not so much. And so I actually had to kind of develop just kind of being busy almost for the sake of being busy, but more so because just early on there was just so much to do, and there was only two of us working on it. It was just like me and Arun, right? And now that I have a team, now I kind of have the luxury to actually focus on busy versus efficient.
I don't know if this is true. Like when I started, I had only 2 hours
Hmm.
every morning. So I was
Okay.
having like a massive time constraint for quick mail. I hated
Hmm.
every second of my day job. I was working in a bank, so no surprise there.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do that for years and years on. So I needed to actually manage to spend my time not being just busy, but actually everything I was working on really counted for the business. And I think that is the massive difference because I've always been obsessed from the very first day I was working to minimize the time, the downtimes between tasks, making sure I was the optimal, like for example, I was developing things and while something was building, I was already reading something else for, the next task and stuff like that. So I wasn't tweeting and saying, oh, I'm just waiting for it, but I always was obsessed with how can I be the most efficient possible. But I never looked at the sort of like all overarching result. Like, am I moving the needle? I was always trying to get the task done the fastest way possible. And yeah, so when I realized I was spending 30 minutes out of my 2 hours to send cold email, just looking at who actually did reply, who should I follow up, and so on. Say, I don't have time for this shit. I need to, do it quickly. And so that's when I started QuickMail, building that script, and um, and
All
it
right, guys,
freed
we're
up a
just
lot
gonna
of time.
okay, guys, we're just gonna cut the episode there. Go to quickmail.io to sign up for your free trial.
That's right. Thanks for your time, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
So it
Oh,
was
that's
always present with me, and I think it's easy to fall into the trap of busyness, right? Like
busyness. Yeah.
creating a logo. What's the name of my company? What's the
Yeah,
color of my
exactly.
branding? It's like,
It's yeah, it's kind of funny because it really does. I feel like the conversation really does come down to kind of like the efficient versus like effective thing of like, yeah, you can be busy working on a bunch of things that don't matter. And now that I think about it, it's funny
yeah,
because I guess when I was thinking about like kind of being busy and doing all of the things, I was really thinking about 2015 when I first went full time on ZenMate, and I all of a sudden had 8 to 10 hours or more a day
ton
to
of
be
things.
working on ZenMate and
Mm.
had across different time zones. But when I really think about it, it was actually more similar to how you were just describing it because we started the company in 2013. And so for 2.5 years, I only had about an hour to like an hour and 45 minutes in the morning to spend working on ZenMaid, and then I had a little bit of time after work to meet up with Arun and to do some stuff. So I was actually very optimized with my time in ZenMaid out of necessity, right? That I didn't have the
I think it
option to be
helps.
busy. Yeah, exactly,
I think it helps.
100%. It completely helped. I think that if I had been full time on ZenMaid earlier, we probably would have failed because the results weren't good enough for like full time work. And so being like part time and more focused, I think actually kept us on track for long enough that we got like the traction, to make it to where we are today.
Yeah, time constraints actually help, which is kind of funny because being busy is like, oh, I can't do that. I have so many things to do. Well, that's called being busy,
Yeah.
right? But if you say, like, which one would you rather have? Like someone who is always like doing some stuff and then in fact the results or the needle doesn't move, or someone who
Mhm.
just work 1 hour a day and then move the needle
Move
consistently?
the
It's
needle.
like
Yeah.
no brainer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely one of the biggest things that shifted for me on a personal level as an entrepreneur is that up until really starting ZenMade and even in previous businesses, I think this is a lot of why like my previous kind of attempts at business had failed was that I'd always been very task oriented, right? Of I think just it was kind of like academic of like you study this material, you implement it or you take the test, you pass the test and like whatever it is. And then once we started ZenMade and I realized that like I'm not in charge of getting the task done, I'm in charge of like the result. And the tasks, like if you
That's
do
right.
enough of the tasks, you get the result. But also there are times where, the tasks that you thought you needed to do to get the result have changed. And just because something was on your task list now it no longer needs to get done, right? And that's something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with, particularly those that are busy, is they're always trying to get things off the to-do list and never stop to think, should this be on my to-do list at all, or should this be on my to-do list anymore?
No, this is a very, very good point. Like, what kind of actionable advice could we give to the listeners? Like, it's too easy to think like, but I'm working, like I'm doing my logo. It's important because until I got my logo, then my website doesn't look good. If my website doesn't look good, my people won't buy it and so on. But very quickly, when I was actually, creating Quickmail and then understanding the value of my actions, very quickly it
Mhm.
was very obvious that the only high activity that I could do was to get clients. So getting on a phone with someone. And my logo
Yeah.
didn't matter nearly as much at all, right? It was a different game. So it's easy to fool yourself thinking like, but I'm doing all those things. But in fact, the actual thing that do matter are very limited. Like there are
Yeah.
not a lot of them.
Yeah. That there's not until you have a lot of the foundational pieces like in place. There's always lots of things to do. Yeah, but there's few things that'll move the needle. Um, One thing that helped me, although I don't know how helpful this will be for someone listening, but it is what worked for me was I had a little stage. Um, I remember during one of the volcano retreats, I was doing this like a lot. Is I started asking the question both to myself and to other people of, is that true? And it sounds so simple, but it makes people really, really like reconsider their beliefs. So when someone says, oh, if I don't make this logo better, then people aren't going to take my brand seriously and they're not going to sign up. It's like, well, is that true? Like, aren't like isn't every customer that's coming to you right now, aren't you actually going to them and like using cold email? Like, do they even care about your logo? Right?
I do. I know. I
When's
wouldn't sign up an SEO company unless the logo is really, really good.
I mean, what's funny is that like it actually can be a red flag, right? Is like I would
It's
never
true.
sign up for a company because of a logo, but I could definitely see seeing a logo that was like that bad that like,
I don't know the
I just
logo of
wouldn't
the
sign
company
up.
I'm working with. Like, I don't know the logo of Jack. It's like, I have no idea.
Yeah,
And I've been working
yeah.
with him for 4 years. It's like,
And like when in doubt, you can just use something completely like generic and like just don't like offend anyone, right? I
that's
mean,
right.
so
Do a circle. Stay safe.
yeah, yeah. But I found that question was actually like really helpful whenever you're telling yourself like I need to do this, right? But even that might be maybe a step further like along. So in terms of a little more actionable advice, this might be a little bit cliche or overused now because it's from like the 4 Hour Work Week with Tim Ferriss. But asking yourself, if you only got one thing done today to like move the business forward, what would that be?
Is that true?
That
I'm kidding.
that is true, Jeremy. Very good question. The one thing though is when you ask yourself that question, the implication is not that that you're only going to do one thing, particularly if you're new and you're busy to the business, but it's more just realizing like, hey, if I don't knock this one item off my to-do list today, I'm essentially just delaying, moving the business forward, getting the result, whatever it might be.
So that's a good point. I will jump on this and I would
Hmm.
say, here's my advice, especially at the beginning. And I would tell you how my mindset sort of like evolved. But at the beginning of your new venture, it will be, does this activity brings money? If it's the closer it is to the money, the more important it is. And the more you can do those ones, the more chances you're going to have to create money. And obviously the goal of the company is to create money, or not necessarily, but at least it's to have no money, no company, right? It's simple as that. It's like the oxygen. You have to have oxygen, and it's the same thing with money and the company. So does creating the logo brings immediate value? No, it actually costs me money, because I'm going to
Hmm.
99 Design, I'm going to whatever. That's actually cost me money. Um, does actually going on a call with a potential customer brings money? Well, potentially yes, and it's pretty good chance that if you're doing a good demo call, you're gonna end up with a customer. So obviously you should prioritize that over creating a logo. Everything that costs money is usually playing business or things you have to pay. Like, I have to pay my accountant. It's like there's no way around, otherwise my company is not registered. But do I need to register my company in order to make money? Not necessarily at the beginning, right? You could go
Yeah.
straight and try to get some clients. You don't need to create money in order to spend money in order to generate money at the very beginning. So the closest you are to that line of, that's going to generate me money, the more chances that your activity are going to be good, right? I would say.
Yeah. That's what I think in sales referred to as like a revenue generating activity, right? Is yeah, the closer that you are to the money, the better. One thing though that I would like to, I guess, kind of caution here, because I think this is something that threw me off a lot when I was starting out and would hear about people talking about prioritization. So I don't think that I don't think that what Jeremy and I are saying here, and Jeremy, correct if I'm wrong, is like
You're
actually
wrong.
saying to like not make a logo. That lots of these things do actually need to be done, but it's important to realize what's important and what can be 80/20. So again, from like the 4 Hour Work Week, if you guys are listening to this and you haven't read the 4 Hour Work Week, go read it, or go read just the section on kind of like optimizing your life. The two laws that he talks about there are Parkinson's law and Pareto's law, or the 80/20 principle, right? So figuring out what are the most important things to work on in your company are really important. So like Jeremy said, you do want to be focusing on the demos, but you probably do genuinely need a logo for your website. Now, the difference here is that if a logo is not that important to moving the needle for you right now, which it probably isn't. If you already have a logo, you should forget about your logo and go do other things. If you don't have a logo though
Change it.
right
If you don't
now,
have clients, it's because your logo was not good enough. Change it to a
if
square.
if you don't have a logo yet though, you can just go and use a very quick logo generator that's free or costs $5 or something. But our point here is, don't go spend 3 weeks hiring a designer, going through 99 designs, and spending a bunch of mental energy and resources and time and money, when you could be doing demos for clients and actually be making money. And so this is something that like that's very helpful if you go, okay, this isn't that important, so I'm going to give myself 1 hour to get it done. And so that's Parkinson's law from the 4 hour like work week. And yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're saying.
So,
Because
someone's been rereading the book recently, no?
I reread it, I think 3 months ago maybe, but
Oh,
it was the
okay.
first time in like 3 years. Yeah,
Damn,
first time in like 3 years that I'd read it.
my
So
teasing didn't work on this one. Um, yeah, I like this idea. Plus, what a great story it is. Like, hey, I got 100, 100 customer. I never had a logo. It's really cool. That's a good, story on a podcast.
We used a logo that we spent $5 on Fiverr, like a little like Zen symbol, and then it just said Zen made next to it, and that was our logo for the first 4 years in business. So we made it
It's
to
not bad. $5 per for 4 years.
almost $30,000 a month. I think we made it to like 15 or $20,000 a month with a $5 logo.
So why did you think you have to redo it?
So actually, I know that's a great question. Actually, so when we
It
decided
is
to
a great
redo our
question.
logo, we redid the logo with an entire rebrand that we were doing. So we changed everything in the software, and then thought about how we wanted the software to make everyone feel, what the logo would look like. We rethought the color scheme, all of that. So the logo was redone with a much bigger package. We didn't redo the logo for the sake of redoing the logo.
Did I tell you? Did I ever share with you my theory of a storefront effect?
I don't think so. No, I want to hear
Okay,
this.
so I guess this is the same thing. Like people don't know you. You have your $5 logo on Fiverr for a few years. Then you do that rebranding, and suddenly people start to know you, right? And
Yeah.
so when they want to create their own business, they're only seeing what the surface is. Like it's a storefront. Like you don't see
Hmm.
the back end of
Yeah.
all the logistic, all the
Hmm.
budgeting, all the forecast, all the design, all the R&D and stuff like that. You only see the storefront, which is that's cool. In order to have a business, I have to have that storefront nailed down, right? A nice
Yeah.
one. But what
Yeah.
people don't understand is like they try then to build it from the storefront, what they actually see. And so they try to replicate. I need a logo, I need a good, branding, a good whatever. What they don't understand is that a business is built the opposite way. It starts with the back end, it's very scrappy, it's not looking great. And then you keep on adding version of
Hmm.
redesign, that makes it more broader appeal, knowing everyone, attracting more people, and then people try to replicate the last layer that they
Yeah.
see. And I think that's a storefront effect. You see it a lot when you go
So
to startup weekends and stuff like that. People are
yeah.
spending like an entire day thinking about the branding. Like, dude, the branding will come at the end, right? Just
Yeah.
get the money first.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I want to get all the foundational stuff in place so we know what we're good at, so we know where we're coming from, and then you figure out like the branding.
Yeah,
Maybe that'll change for us when we do like future like companies. Now that we have the experiences, maybe it'll go like the other way. But it's funny because I've been seeing on Twitter quite a bit recently. Um, a little bit like cliche, but I think for the same reasons you're describing, it's easy to copy a product. It's very difficult to copy a distribution channel,
that's true.
right?
That's a good
And
one.
that's pretty much the same thing you're saying is it's easy to do the storefront. It's easy to see like, oh, like it's a bakery. Here's what a bakery does. But what you don't see is you don't see how the bakery is bringing people in the door. And like that's like the
Yeah, the
magic
hiring
that's hard to
process. It's like,
recreate.
oh, bummer, I need to
Exactly.
hire people. You
Yeah.
know,
Or like the suppliers, you don't see that
that's a good
behind
point.
the
Yeah,
scenes, like where
negotiating
where do they get
contracts.
everything?
Exactly.
Hmm.
No, that's a great point. It reminds me one of the reasons why we we probably like lasted 7 years with like a crappy interface for signing up. And then one day I jump on a call with actually not jump on a call, but I receive an email from a customer. I have some exchanges and so on. Then he say, I guess you guys are still in beta. It's like, what do you mean we're still in beta? Like we've been in business for 7 years. It's like they say, oh, I don't know. Like I don't mean to insult you, but when I signed up, I look at this page and it looked like something that someone would like. Okay, and then he kicked off the redesign, but at that stage then you can say, okay, if we have this ambition to be there and we actually look like there, then maybe there's a gap here we need to fill. And until you reach that, then it's not necessary at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the last point I'd like to make about being busy versus actually doing things that matters
Is that what we're talking
is
about?
I think it is. I try to avoid the efficiency, effective type of discussion. We'll come back with proper definition from Google. But the last thing I'd like to say is that as we're growing as a team, that same thinking needs to permeate your company. And so being efficient for me doesn't necessarily mean nowadays taking a call with a client, because taking a call with a client may actually bring, I don't know, $300 a month, or things like that. But me spending the time with my team members that will then help them to then do all those calls, that's when I start to think now about my time and how I can leverage my time. So it doesn't necessarily mean to be like I get the money straight away for all the activity I do, but it's more about
Mm.
training other people and leverage other people to then go ahead and then create, that wealth. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
it definitely changes over time, kind of what those things are that make you busy versus efficient, right? That the same things that make you efficient in your first year in business would be highly inefficient when you're 5 or 6 years in, right?
That's right.
Um, that yeah, like I'm doing something that's like specifically not scalable, like right now, right? Where but it's
With
not
your summit.
necessarily
Yeah.
busy. Yeah, with the summit, right? And so like I have the team that's organized all of that. And so I've put together the systems in place over like the years so the team can take care of all of the organization, but I'm still showing up for that like that last part. So I get to FaceTime with all the customers, right? And so in a lot of ways, I was initially busy doing the summit. And then over the years, I've become more and more efficient with it. So now the team does all of that stuff and I come in for the absolute highest value like activity. And that's something that like if I had tried to do that in year 1, year 3, even like year 6, that would have just backfired on us so hard.
What do you mean by backfire? Isn't that more like it wouldn't have, moved the needle as much, or what do you mean?
No, like I think that the entire event would have flopped. To be honest, I think that if I had tried to take that approach, we wouldn't have
Mhm.
had like any sort of success like
I see
with
what you mean.
with the summit. Yeah, so it would have been a huge drain of resources for like no gain or whatever.
So you're saying that one of the that some activities, it's a bit like actually no, you guys don't drive a stick, shift
I
cars, but
do. I mean, some
you
people
do.
do in the
So
U.S.
it's
Yeah,
like being in a fifth gear and then trying to accelerate. You're gonna go very slowly. You better
yeah,
start in the first gear. You're gonna get more punching stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. Last thing, actual last things. You just mentioned about kind of like training up your team or how like it does like shift for us, right? Of as entrepreneurs, it shifts, but also training it into your team is also a really like important thing to consider. So the kind of like the understanding that we have with our team, and I don't know, this seems like fair and reasonable. But well,
what a
because
big
I was
disclaimer.
like, well, like I don't know how else it would work in like a like it would seem like dysfunctional if it worked like any other way. So like essentially when we have tasks that are assigned to our team members, the team members all know like they have to get the tasks done, but we encourage team members to speak up when they think that they shouldn't be doing a task because it's no longer efficient for the business. And so the understanding is like, if we've asked you to do it, then you still do it, but you do it. And then you say, hey, like I just finished this task. Honestly, it doesn't really seem like I'm doing this for any reason anymore because maybe X, Y, and Z has changed. Or can Chris look into this and see if this is still necessary? Because I'm not clear why I'm doing it. And so what happens is like because we've made it so that our team is open to making that suggestion, sometimes we find out when it's like, hey, actually this is really important, but we realize that we didn't really explain to you
Mm-hmm.
why this task actually matters. So here's why what you're doing is important. And then there's also a lot of times, particularly with our VAs that have been on the team for like 2 or 3 years, they'll sometimes come to us and be like, hey, like here are 3 processes that I'm still doing that clearly like we don't need to do anymore because you guys made XYZ like technical
Yeah.
change, right?
It's a
And
great
so
example
that
of being busy. You can have an army of people being busy at your company, and I think you'll
yeah,
be hugely inefficient.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So I guess that concludes our little podcast on being busy versus being something, EF.
Yeah. Effective system. Uh,
Effective. All right. Great cast. Thanks, Amal.
yeah, yeah. Come join us on Twitter. Got any comments on this?